Hi everyone, welcome back to Faith Life Travels. I'm Gabrielle Noel and I make videos on authentic Catholic living on Tuesdays and on Catechism or apologetics on Thursdays. So if this is the kind of content that interests you, be sure to like, comment on, and share this video and subscribe to my channel. Furthermore, make sure that you tap the bell next to the subscribe button so that every time one of my videos goes live, you will get that notification. So let's start as usual with the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Today's video is a continuation of my journey with modesty, which I started sharing in my video, which is entitled My Modesty Journey. So if you haven't seen that one already, I will link it at the end of this video so you can check it out. In that first video, I mentioned that lack of modesty is a sin against the sixth and ninth commandment, and that Pope Pius XI in 1930 put out a document outlining standards for modesty for Catholics. So in this video, we're going to explore those things. And at the end of this video, I'm going to share with you one of my modesty boards on Pinterest, which has been the source of inspiration and finding cute clothes that are actually modest. Most likely this video is going to be a bit long, so bear with me on that one. Firstly, I'd like to point out that all authentic Catholic teachings has its roots in the Bible. There are many Bible verses that I can quote here that either directly or indirectly address the topic of modesty. However, when you're going through the Bible, a lot of these things, when it comes to what clothes are considered modest or immodest, the Bible seems to be a little bit vague. I'm guessing that the reason for that is that perhaps at the time when these things were written, there was a general understanding of what modesty actually is. However, I believe that's not really the case today. Of course, the Word of God strictly admonishes cross-dressing, as we see in Deuteronomy 22 verse 5. But in today's world, I believe we need a lot more specifics than that. This is why I really have grown to appreciate this document put out by Pope Pius XI. One thing I'd like to draw your attention to, though, is the timing of this document. For me, when I saw that it came out in 1930, this was really interesting because this is literally 13 years after the apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima. One of her messages in these apparitions was that certain fashions were about to come about that were going to be offensive to God, that would offend God very much. So I just thought that was interesting. But anyways, let's take a look at the document.
All right, so let's look at this document Pope Pius the 11th put out in 1930. We're not going to read all of it together. I just want to highlight certain parts. But when it comes to the modesty standards, I'll probably read all of it. Okay, so let me just enlarge this a bit. All right, so it says here, by virtue of his supreme apostolate, whereby the universal church is founded by divine institution, our most holy Lordship Pope Pius XI never tires of reiterating the words of St. Paul, who with women also in decent apparel, adorning themselves with modesty and sobriety, but as it becometh woman, professing godliness with good works. And that's taken from 1 Timothy 2, verses 9 to 10. And he continues, Frequently, when the occasion has presented itself, the selfsame Holy Pontiff has reproved and bitterly condemned immodesty of dress pervasively introduced into use these days amongst Catholic women and girls, a thing which not only gravely offends feminine beauty and ornament, but leads most lamentably to the temporal and worse still, the eternal ruin of these same women and onto the ruin of others still. So here he's stressing the fact that modesty has some sort of effect of mortal sin when people dress in that way. So going down, we're going to look at some points here that he gave as guidance for people in leadership in life and in the church concerning immodesty of dress, not only for themselves but for the people in their charge. So he says here, 1, may parish priests especially and preachers, when the occasion presents itself and according to the words of St. Paul, demand, reprove, beseech, and rebuke women to wear clothes that redolent of modesty and such other things as are the ornament and vanguard of virtue, and may they warn parents not to permit their children to wear unseemly dress. 2. Parents, being ever mindful of the most awesome obligation which binds them of caring firstly and foremostly for the moral and religious education of their children, are to apply particular diligence that their daughters be firmly grounded in Christian doctrine, and that those same daughters also zealously foster in their souls by words and example the love of virtues of modesty and chastity. May parents also, in imitation of the Holy Family, busy themselves about so ordering and governing their family that each and every individual within the family home has a cause and incentive to love and guard modesty. 3. Let those same parents prohibit their children from public athletic events and gymnastics competitions, or at least if their daughters must be involved in them, that they take care to exhibit clothing which is fully in keeping with modesty, and that their parents never permit them to wear immodest clothing. This one actually, like, hearing this, I was just like, oh my gosh, this reminds me so much of like rules that would have come from like Muslims. You know, Muslims are the ones who have, at least in my lifetime, been more specific about modesty, even when it comes to athletics and stuff. But here it is. We're seeing historically that those same kind of rules apply to us as Catholics too. May those same governesses and instructresses, he's talking about principals and teachers at schools, with no exception, even to their own mothers, forbid admission to colleges and schools to such women as wear unseemly clothing, and once admitted, if they fail to come to their senses, that they dismiss them. Right? So we see in some high standards here. And finally, we're just going to skip over to number 9, where it says, women and girls who wear immodest clothes are to be prohibited from Holy Communion and from the office of sponsor in the sacraments of baptism and confirmation. And in certain cases, they are prohibited even from entry into the church. So, guys, you see, like, this thing is actually very serious. I don't know why our priests and bishops and stuff do not like try to encourage this among the faithful in these days, right? Anyways, continuing along, these standards of modesty for Catholics are called Mary-like standards for modesty, meaning that we are supposed to be looking to Mother Mary as our standard for modesty. I'm really sorry if you are hearing the dogs barking outside. Forgive me, I can't really do anything about that. All right. So number 1 says, Mary like is modest without compromise, like Mary, Christ's mother. Mary-like dresses have sleeves extending at least to the elbows and skirts reaching below the knees. And here in the Note Well section, they're talking about being allowed to wear shorter length sleeves due to the fact that you can't always find long sleeves in all of your clothing, okay? Number 3, Mary-like dress requires full coverage of the bodice, chest, shoulders, and back, except for a cutout about the neck, not exceeding 2 inches below the neckline, in front and in back, and a corresponding 2 inches on the shoulders. Number 4, Mary-like dresses do not admit as modest coverage transparent fabrics. And we're talking here about laces, nets, organdy, nylons, etc., unless sufficient backing is added. However, their moderate use as trimmings is acceptable, right? So this actually, there was a fashion going around. I saw it a few times on Instagram where some women would be dressing, going to parties, and they have this skirt, and the skirt is made of like a completely sheer material, and there would be like a matching underwear underneath. I always thought that to be very like why would you even put a skirt over that? Like, why not just go with your underwear? Anyways, continuing along. Mary-like dresses do not admit the use improper of flesh-colored fabrics. Number 6. Mary-like dresses conceal rather than reveal the figure of the wearer. They do not unduly emphasize the parts of the body. Number 7. Mary-like dresses provide full coverage even after the jacket or cape or stole are removed. Number 8. Slacks or jeans are not to be worn in church. Boom. Yeah, so these are the standards given by the church back in 1930 for how us women are to dress. Now, I don't believe that this is only really about women and how they dress. In today's world, we've seen immodesty even among men. So I just want to point out here that even men, you need to be careful. Like it says here, right? Jeans are not to be worn in church, right? So let's cut out the jeans in church, men. And also there are pants that men wear now, and even some tops that are just too tight, and it is distracting even for women, right? So let's consider that for our men as well.
So before we continue, I forgot to mention that, listen, this information is going to ruffle feathers, right? It's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. I have also felt uncomfortable with the things that I just read to you. But over time, I came to appreciate it because when I applied it to my life, I saw literally how men's approach to me changed, right? Men treat me now with a lot more respect than when I used to dress immodestly before. I can hear all the women's associations starting to type comments on this video talking about blaming victims and stuff. Honestly speaking, those arguments do not really affect me and the way that I think and what I understand now about modesty. Because, listen, there are certain situations in which we are responsible for the sins of other people. And yes, sometimes I believe that if we are dressing immodestly, we add and encourage the sins of men. So I'm just putting that out there If you want to go ahead and type those kinds of comments under my video, be my guest, but I'm just letting you know from now that that's not going to affect me and the way I think about this topic. So let's go a little further now into the Penny Catechism and what it has to say about modesty concerning the 6th and 9th commandments. So I'm reading now from the Penny Catechism, my favorite book. And question 209 asks, what is the 6th commandment? And the answer is, thou shalt not commit adultery. 210. What does the 6th commandment forbid? The 6th commandment forbids all sins of impurity with another's wife or husband. Now, this does not this does not eliminate people who are not married, right? Remember that we may not be able to see it now, but people who are not married have already been promised to another person. So even if we're talking about fornication, this falls under the 6th and 9th commandment too. Spiritually, those people are already destined for someone else, most likely. Question 211. Does the 6th commandment forbid whatever is contrary to holy purity? The 6th commandment forbids whatever is contrary to holy purity in looks, words, or actions. Question 212. Are immodest plays and dances forbidden by the 6th commandment? Immodest plays and dances are forbidden by the 6th commandment, and it is sinful to look at them. Now, when I read this one, it actually took me back to a few Carnival concerts last year, especially Tuesday on the Rocks. So I went to Kes concert last year, and with all of these soca concerts, Carnival concerts, you always have dancers on the stage who will be dressed immodestly and dancing in a very provocative manner. This is sinful even for us as Catholics to look at. It's a sin against the 6th commandment, as we see here in the Penny Catechism, right? So we need to be mindful of that going into Carnival this year, right? Even if the events are all virtual. The next thing I want to talk about is the type of shows that we look at. We need to be very careful about the types of movies and shows that we look at nowadays, because we know in modern times most shows have a lot of indecent, immodest content in it, and it is sinful for us to look at. Continuing, does the 6th commandment forbid immodest songs, books, and pictures? I mean, you can only imagine the answer to this, right? The 6th commandment forbids immodest songs, books, and pictures because they are most dangerous to the soul and lead to mortal sin. So here again, right? We need to be cautious. I'm going to be very direct. We need to be very cautious about soca music. A lot of the lyrics and messages behind this soca music that we love so much, and dancehall music too, is actually sinful for us as Catholics, right? So we need to be aware of that and confess it when we go to confession. Moving along to the 9th commandment. Question 223 asks, what is the 9th commandment? And it says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Question 224. What does the 9th commandment forbid? The 9th commandment forbids all willful consent to impure thoughts and desires, and all willful pleasure in the irregular motions of the flesh. Right? So, for example, if a woman is dressed modestly, right? Modestly, and a man still lusts after her, due to the 9th commandment, he is he is culpable of sin against the ninth commandment, right? So and that is where we're talking about willful consent to impure thoughts. Now, he will share guilt with the woman if the woman is dressed immodestly, because if she's dressed immodestly, she is contributing to the willful consent to impure thoughts, right? You might say why, but listen, there are many situations in which the church teaches that sometimes we contribute to the sins of others, and this is one of them. But also I want to add, us as women, we need to be aware of certain things. I know society now tries to teach us that men and women are the same, but I'm telling you it's not true, right? When you look at neurological science, you would see that generally speaking, the male brain reacts differently to things that the female brain would react to. And vice versa, there are things that the female brain will react to that the male brain is not going to react to, right? Men are stimulated, generally they are stimulated visually, and we as women, we need to be aware of that. This is science. This is honest science, right? When science is honest, it actually reflects the law of God, right? So just keep that in mind. The final question is not as related to modesty, but it's still important information. Question 225 asks, what sins commonly lead to the breaking of the 6th and 9th commandments? The sins that commonly lead to the breaking of the 6th and 9th commandments are gluttony, drunkenness, and intemperance, and also idleness, bad company, and the neglect of prayer. So guys, there is one thing that I really want to stress in this video. For a lot of us who are Catholic, who would have grown up in the Caribbean where we have Carnival, we need to come to the point where we can realize that Carnival in its current manifestation is actually sinful for us as Catholics. We would be participating in certain parts of Carnival, in going to certain concerts, and participating in the parade of bands where you wear that big bikini and beads costumes and feathers. Partaking in those things are mortal sins for us. They are sins against the 6th and 9th commandments. And I understand a lot of us have attachments. Previously, I was very, very, very attached to soca music for most of my adult life. So I understand the attachment to it. But if you are feeling convicted by this video and you're thinking changing is impossible, I would tell you, yes, it's impossible if you try to do it by yourself. But remember, Jesus said he's not going to leave us orphans. And Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So if you feel convicted and you want to change, step one, I would say, cry out to God and ask him for his grace to help you accept this message and to journey with you in the process of letting go of, attachments to Carnival, right? And I can assure you, if you put God first in your life, he's only going to bless you. He's going to bless you. He's going to give you peace in your life. He's going to turn around the way men treat you. And like in our generation, we have a lot of problems settling into good relationships, right? I can assure you, you are going to start to attract good, wholesome men if you change the way that you dress, to dress more modestly, and avoid participation in these kinds of events, right? So we've come to the part of the video where I want to share with you my modesty board on Pinterest. So stay tuned for that. But first, let's close with the Gloria Patri. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen.
Hey guys, as promised, we're taking a little look at my casual modesty board on Pinterest. So this is that board, and Pinterest really helped me with my modesty journey. It showed me that you don't have to be frumpy, you don't have to look frumpy, you don't have to look boring to be modest, right? Like, for instance, look at this. Look at this skirt. This skirt is so lovely. And as well as this one and this red one over here with the buttons to the front. So I'm just going to scroll down and show you some of my motivations for modesty. One of the styles that I totally love are these silk skirts. I don't have any as yet, but I intend to either invest in one eventually or have one made. So you can have skirts that are pleated, like that, or like this one, or skirts that are a lot more long and flowy. Skirts with different patterns. So I used to also have a lot of pencil skirts on here. But I quickly decided to take them off of my inspiration boards because I realized with my body shape, pencil skirts is not exactly a good idea. It calls the same kind of attention as tight jeans. I also love wrap skirts like this one here. And I'm also experimenting this whole thing about wearing pretty skirts with sneakers. This was a new concept for me. So yes, this is basically it. These are my inspirations for what I would like to wear, and what I tend to look for when I'm shopping. Just looking at these pictures, you know, half these things you're going to have to order them online. Ooh, I really like this girl. Let me just play her little video. Okay, so I hope you enjoy this little bit of modesty inspiration from my my casual modesty board. You can follow me on Pinterest if you want. My name there is Gabrielle Noel. That's GABRIELLE Noel, NOEL. All right. Take care.